graduate of Grambling State University, and she currently works for Southern University. And before I want to join her and mess everything else up, I'm going to allow her to come up and tell you a few things about herself. Thank you. Can we welcome to the stage?
How's everybody doing?
All right.
Great. Well, that was enough about me. We are just a servant of the Lord and just glad to be here for this event. I do want to take a moment of personal privilege to just thank Lynn Cawthorn. I'm sure the day has gone long, but let's give him a round of applause for keeping this going. You know, it's something to be said about starting something and starting small. I remember when he first started this event, and we all came together, and he had a great turnout, and I've seen it grow and grow and grow, and now we are here at the Shreveport Convention Center to talk about important subjects that are relative to African Americans, or as I like to just keep it real simple, blacks in Shreveport.
There you go.
That's right. So I like to do that from time to time. Tell a little truth. So this panel is going to be phenomenal. The role of the Black church in 2016. And we all know that there are always discussions about the church and how it evolves over the years. We've seen some evolution of the Black church. And so we have some very capable panelists with us, and I'm going to introduce them. We have panelist Pastor Roy Gardner. Amen. Please wave and let's give a round of applause. Dr. Bernard Kimball. Pastor Dennis R. Everett. I think he's en route. Oh, he had a funeral. Okay. All right. And Bill Sharp. Crystal Lindsay. Dr. Keena Franklin, and Omari Hosang. Hosang. I was so close. So very, very, very close. Well, let's get right to it. So I am going to give the panelists some questions. And then I'm going to just have them kind of jump in there, and I'll do my best to, I started to wear black and white like a referee and bring my whistle, but I know that these distinguished panelists will allow their panel members to speak and jump in, but we're going to have a very fruitful discussion, and then towards the end, I'm going to, if it's okay with Mr. Cawthorn, if we maybe have some questions from the floor. Okay, so our first question is, why does it seem the Black church is more of a business than a platform for societal change? Okay, so why does it seem the Black church is more of a business than a platform for societal change? And you have microphones on your table, so who's on deck for? Okay, come on, ma'am. Miss Omari.
I think before I can answer that question with a simple yes or no, or with something so definite, I think we first have to look at the history of the Black church and look at the fact that when we came over here in 1619, we were focused on liberation because we were in a phase where we were either indentured servants or slaves. So the Black church, number one, was founded through the auspices of the white church. That's something that we cannot ignore, number one. And then number two, when it became an independent institution, we were focused on abolishing slavery. We were focused on, after the abolition of slavery, on helping those newly freed slaves. We were focused on, into the civil rights movement, on making sure that people were gaining their basic human rights in the United States of America. So the church served a profound role. No one would say that it was simply a business. So I think in 2016, as we look around at different churches and we look on the TV, we look at hip-hop, not hip-hop, my bad, I get them confused sometimes, but the preachers of Atlanta. It's reasonable to kind of feel that the Black church has digressed into simply a business. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a business. There's nothing wrong with acquiring capital. There's nothing wrong with that. But when that is your sole focus, when your parishioners are in the midst of some of the most trying and challenging social issues of our time, I think it's important that we stay in the lane of liberation, because that's where we were started. That's why the Black church exists. So I think that it is easy for us to think, oh, we have digressed into simply a business. But I don't think we should dismiss the church wholesale and say that's all churches. Because we can look locally in Shreveport, as I've been schooled today, that there are churches that are giving back and are focused and very committed to liberating, no matter what your definition of that is, the people of Shreveport. So that's kind of my answer there. I think we have kind of gotten lost and it's become murky what our purpose is, and we've kind of gotten away from it. But let's not dismiss the church wholesale. I don't think the church, the Black church, is just a business. But I think some of us have gotten murked into that.
All right. Anybody else want to weigh in on that question?
Thank you so much. Well, I think an important part of that question was scenes. And quite oftentimes it may appear, but unless you're into the inward movement of the church, you really won't know what's happening. We are in fact in the 21st century, so we must do ministry much differently than we've done it before. One of the old hymns of the church, it had a line in it which simply said this, and of course it's also the title of a book of mine, my most recent book, and that is To Serve This Present Age. And so the church has to move with time, and quite oftentimes it is the only institution that has not kept up with time. And today, from a pastor's perspective, though we may have boards and we have people that we work with and things of that nature, the expectation of the pastor now is even much different than it was years ago. Today, we must not only manage people, but we must manage buildings and budgets. And so it's really quite different, and especially when you have people no longer value the Black church, and it's a generational thing. It just didn't happen today. I mean, we've been making this move for quite a few years, and one of the things I often say, and this is just me, so y'all just please accept it from a pastor's perspective, and especially one who was born and raised in Shreveport. I think integration did not serve us well because we did not properly use it. And I'll justify that statement. Being a part of integration in the 70s, early 70s, when we was in fact uprooted from Eden Gardens School mid-year in 1970. And of course, in being transferred to Captain Shreve High School, it was a great opportunity, big difference, because I was, back then a music person, and it afforded me opportunities that I would not have realized if I would have remained at Eden Gardens. It gave me, lots of opportunity. But by that same measure, many of our parents, they moved from a spot with God that put them in a position to where they wanted us to compete on somebody else's playing field, rather than being true to our God, the God that has brought us all these many years. And so when you make those kind of compromises, and that started back in 1970, and of course I was, very much aware of some parents who was working, and they were even working private home jobs and this kind of thing, but they were taking all their monies to ensure that their kids looked like the other kids, and in some cases they took their monies to make sure that their kid could drive to school while they rode a city bus. And it was because the place that we migrated to or integrated into, we began to take on the form, of that place. And so when you look at it, in my opinion, from a biblical perspective, it's okay to go to Canaan, but you don't take on Canaan ways. And so now, from a pastor's perspective, we are pastoring people that have taken on the ways of Canaan. And they're not true to God. And for the most part, on any given day, those of us that are in charge of pulpits, it is a major strain, because the mentality of people, they don't love God the way that we used to love Him. There is not that profound love for the church that we used to have, if that makes sense. And so it's a seem-like thing, but until we get to the inside of it, then it will always seem like it's a business thing, because we got to do it for those buildings and budgets and things of that nature.
So it sounds like a church has become a bit of an enterprise. Somebody else want to jump in?
Yes. The truth is that church has become a business. To answer your question, it says it seems like a business because as I read my Bible back and forth and back, we have a lot of fundraisers in church, and people have lost track of what God really stood for. And God is love. You go to church for love. You go to church to learn something. And 90% of the people that you ask after they leave church on Sunday, the first thing they say is, God is good. Well, you could have stayed in bed for that. And the truth is that we have to stop the naming and claiming and the sowing of the seed to make things better. For Hosea 4:6 say, people perish for the lack of knowledge. And so therefore, when you know better, you do better. So you have to know what you're going to church for. See, church is not a place to raise money. Church is a place to teach you the Bible. And if you follow Jesus' ministry, his ministry was, they called him the teacher. And Jeremiah 3:15 clearly says that a pastor, give you pastors according to thine heart, that will teach you. And teaching is the reason why it seems like a business, because so many people in the community are being misled. The church is on every corner. Because what happens is that a lot of people open up churches for financial benefit. A lot of things in church are for financial benefit. We're getting to the point that we're making more superstars than we are making disciples. And that's not the way God intended for it to be. The truth is that when you go to church, you're going there for a spiritual healing and to understand how to live everyday life. You're not there to say, I paid my tithes and everything all right. But tithing is only part of your worship. Because just because you got a big bank account, that does not mean you have a big heart. So that's the reason why it seems like a big business, because it has become a big business. We have so many second services and we have so many anniversaries and things of that nature, but what does that have to do with the Bible? What does it have to do with what people should stand for? If you look at the economical standpoint, they said that from 1980 to 2006, the black church raised $420 billion. Wow. So it's something wrong with that. With $420 billion, why do we as the black church have to go to a bank to get a mortgage loan?
Listen, man.
Why do we have to do that? You know why? It's because we have an anniversaries where we have to raise $100,000. But why are we raising $100,000? Why are we raising this $50,000? To build bigger barns? Is that what it is? Or are we building more disciples? Because with $100,000, you got to think about it. I'm raising $100,000 for my church, but my average income in my church congregation is $25,000 to $35,000. So what I'm trying to do is I'm squeezing blood out of a turnip, and that is not the way that God intended for it to be. So that's the reason why it seems as if it is a business, because it has turned into a business, because all you got to do is rent you out a building and put a cross in it, and you got a church. But there's no kind of requirements, because what happened is that nobody fears God anymore. They think it's okay to come there and get paid and not teach nothing. But you don't go to college just to get a refund check. You go to college to show a level of completion and to educate yourself to do better. And that's the reason why.
Thank you, Dr. Franklin. I think you're jumping in there.
Now, in answering, being the fourth person that responds, I could just really say amen to all that has been said. But I think providing a different perspective, I would just want to add that it's always a political statement what we choose to focus on versus what we choose to ignore, and whether we couch things in a negative context or a positive context. anything that has life and the potential to grow is often dynamic. And that in the dynamics of it, there's change. And in changing, we sometimes get off course just slightly, but we'll come back as long as our perspective is the same, and that is saving souls and winning souls for Christ. I think that we are doing some unique things. We don't always get it right, but our purpose and our mission and our scope should support the church moving forward. I also like the historical perspective that was presented in that how we started and why and where we are now. And I think that when we got through the successful civil rights movement, with the church being playing such a pivotal role, we knew that we needed to do things differently. We just were not sure what different would look like. And I think that what we also realized was that the things we needed to do cost money. And so some of us, not all, some churches lost their way and started focusing more on money and focused on building bigger buildings and not winning souls. So I think that we got a little bit off track, but every plane that takes off from an airport gets off track, but because they have a flight plan, they're able to get back on track and to land wherever their original destination was. And so I want to think that the church is getting back on course. But also, the things that we try to do in the 21st century church that's relevant, it requires money. It's an enterprise that requires money. And I think everything rises and falls on the leadership in that congregation and what they choose to do with that money.
Amen. I'm not a pastor. I'm really intimidated by being on this panel with you, and I appreciate the opportunity. But let me say, having grown up with my mother's Catholic, my father's Episcopalian, grew up in Los Angeles, California, South Central. And I'm a member of a Baptist church now, so I've got a broad swath of how things go. I think, simply put, is that when you talk about the monetization of the Black church now, in my opinion, it's because many churches and our community is being led by sight and not by faith. And when you talk about that, it reminds me, because the three most important entities in our community used to be the school, the church, and the home. And anytime any one of those disintegrated, we have what we have now, which is chaos. And I'm reminded of the story, because sometimes, people talk about, well, man, that's old school. Well, air is old school. Water is old school. Please, may I, and thank you is old school. So we need old school, and again, I'm reminded, and for brevity, I'll minimize or edit this experience, but I'm reminded of the grandmother who has a daughter who is an addict, and with 4 children, and as we know, the cycle of addiction, eventually that daughter, because of her choices and her decisions, the consequences was for her to end up to be incarcerated. So here's this grandmother with 4 children. In the first couple of months, it's all good, but after that, groceries minimized, because this is a grandmother who was, taking care of things by herself. And as these 4 children look in the cupboard and look in the refrigerator and see that, it's a little thin in here. And so grandma says, well, look, go up to the grocery store and I'll write a little note. And I want you, because I prayed on this. We good. That's old school. Prayed on this. I know we're going to be all right. I'm going to write something on the note. You go up to the store and you tell the man that owns the grocery store, give you what you need. So the little kid went up to the grocery store, and he handed the man a note. By the way, this was in the Deep South. This is also where the Klan used to meet. So you know what the color of the man who owned the grocery store was. And he was very cursed with this young child, and he told him, I don't even want to hear that. I don't even want to read the note. And so this little child said, look, my grandmother said she will take care of you as soon as her check comes in at the end of the month. Please, can we do something? He said, I'll tell you what, I've got a scale right here. And anything you put on the scale, anytime that scale dips, that's all you can get. And so the child went about rolling around the grocery store. And he got bread, and he got some milk, and he got some eggs, and he put that on the scale, and the scale never leaned. Now this white owner of the grocery store with his Klan friends is looking at that, and they're wondering, how in the heck did this happen? And so the child went around the grocery store picking up other things, and every time the child put something on the scale, it never leaned one way or the other. Okay? Are y'all with me?
Yeah.
Okay? And so he ended up where he's got almost a basket full of groceries, and all this dude's friends is laughing at him because they figured, how can this happen? All right? You got it, Pastor? And so, dude, the guy who owned the grocery, he said, look, you get one more. Just get the heck out of here. Tell your grandma she don't owe me nothing, but please leave. Okay? Am I right there? And so this child said, well, I got one more thing to do. So he went to the meat section. He got steak, and he got bacon, and he got, pork chops. He got all of that and brought that and put it on the scale. The scale never moved. And the man said, please get the hell out of my store. And so he did. And then he took the note and he threw it in the garbage. And the dude, one of his Klan buddies asked him, don't you want to see what's on that note? Don't you want to? No, I don't want to see what's on that note. And he walked off, and the other guy went to the garbage, and he pulled out the note, and he opened it, and you know what it said? Give us this day our daily bread. That's old school. That's what we need to return to where we came from and not forget. That's all I got.
Well, we talked about, the sister right here, she talked about history, and I heard it spoken about the plan for the church. And Pastor Roy, he talked about one of the main key points, the thing that is lacking now in the not just the black church, but the church in general, is a true, like he said, fear and reverence for God. And the Word of God says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. We first have to have a true fear and reverence for who God is in order to even move forward in the precepts and in the things of God. And the plan has already been laid. We don't need any new direction. We don't need any new methods. We don't need theology. We don't need any of these things but the Word of God. Standing on the solid foundation, which is the truth, preaching Jesus Christ to the people so that they can be made free. Because the Bible says who the Son set free is free indeed. But in order to be set free, you first have to be made free. In order to be made free, you have to be taught the true, uncompromising gospel of Jesus Christ. You have to be told and taught the truth. That's where the problem is that we are allowed to come into church in a certain condition, and we leave the same way we came, and then where it's poured into us that Christ says to come as you are. Okay, yeah, you come as you are, but you're supposed to leave different. When you come into the house of the Lord, it's a place like Pastor Roy said, that you learn the Bible, you're taught the Bible. You come to that altar and you leave those things at that altar that separate you from God. If you're continuing to abide in and to live in sin, then you don't have the Spirit of Christ. Therefore, when you go out into the world and people see you, they're not compelled to come into the church. They're not compelled to want to listen to the pastor. If they see you conforming to the ways of the world and living the same way that they are living, why would they want to change? Why would they want to come to the church? Why would they want to pay tithe? These things come up because they're not seeing the proper example set forth. And I'm not saying that that's not present in every church, but the thing about it is there's only one church. and it's God's church. There's one book, one Bible, one word, and it's God's word. And that's the only way. That's the only way. We have many buildings, yes we do, because of the number of people. Of course everybody can't fit under one building, but it's only one church. It's only one gospel. And until we can rise up as God's people and adhere to his standards, if they're set here, we have to rise up to meet them where he's already set them, not devising new methods and new ways to bring God down to where we are. That's the problem. If you are walking in the precepts of what God says we should do as a people, the church will be a success. Because God's word can't be a lie. It says to let every man be a lie. His word be the truth. And so that's what we have to do. We have to go back to the foundation, which is this book right here, the Word of God, and move forward according to what that says. If God says to put down sin, to turn away from fornication, to stop lusting, to stop committing adultery, to stop backbiting, to stop lying, all of those things have to come up out of the church in order for the church to prosper and move forward in God. And it starts from the pastor on down, leadership on down. Nobody can be overlooked. And that's the problem. We're worried about business. Yes, business is a part of it, but there's also a spiritual part of it as well. And the spiritual part is perfect because that came from God. And the only way that we can move forward in the business aspect and bring the church into fruition the way it's supposed to be is that we have to have the spiritual side down. You have to have the Spirit of God to move forward in the things of God. And that's what's going on in the church, and not just the black church, and amongst a lot of the churches. The prosperity message. It's okay to write books and things like that, but if your book gets away from what this book says, then it's a lie. And I have a right to say that I won't believe it. And it has to be more people that are willing to rise up and to say, no, I'm 30 years old right now, and from studying the Word of God, I've learned that a lot of things that I was taught, even though I was in church my whole life, I was just at church. Never really in church, but at church. A lot of things that grandmother taught me was a lie. Mother, daddy taught me was a lie. And I still love them to this day. I have no resentment or anything like that towards them, but until I started seeking God for knowledge, for their wisdom, their understanding, and he started revealing his word to me, I started to see where there were scriptures that says that we can fall from the grace of God, that, once saved, always saved is not in that Bible. That salvation, yes, is free, and the only reason you're under grace is if you truly accept Jesus Christ, and accepting him is receiving his Spirit, making him Lord of your life, keeping his commandments, doing what he says do. There's one pastor that says at the beginning of his messages, this is my Bible, I can have what it says I can have, but what about I can do what it says I should do?
Come on here. Listen to this.
Right. So our next question, why don't black churches collaborate to build schools, banks, and community centers in neighborhoods that need them, instead of just the local church having certain services at their respective churches? Why don't black churches collaborate to build schools, banks, community centers in neighborhoods that need them, instead of just the local church having certain services at their respective churches? So it sounds like we want to think a little bit about outreach as we focus on that question. Who's going to hop in there first? All right, Mr. Sharp.
And not to answer a question with a question, but I think that goes to the broader lexicon. If Lee Hunter and I go to Chase and try to get a loan to buy a bunch of dump trucks to start a business, we'll get turned down. But if we try to get a loan to buy a Cadillac, am I right there?
Yeah, right.
So I think that it's a larger issue within our community. How come our churches don't pull all of their money out of Chase, Capital One, and Regions and everywhere else and put them in Shreveport Federal Credit Union? I mean, I don't stand back in critique of that, because I think where you do business is where you do business. But at least we should have some skin in the game with investing in our own.
I think it's also about leadership and everybody can't be in control, so who gets to be the chief and who gets to be the followers? I think that is a dynamic that allows us to have a church on every corner, and unity not to be the name of the game or one of the rules that we play by. So I think that we're going to have to look at several things. That leadership, the vision of the leader, and whether or not they are familiar with the word unity, not to mention knowing how to pull groups of people together. But I also think that we also have to watch the way in which we language problems versus opportunities. And I'm bothered by the fact that we are some of our own worst critics, because we will tell a story of demise before we tell a story of empowerment and being uplifted. And so if we're going to be the ones that voice all the negative aspects about our church and about our preacher or our leadership, then where's the opportunity for growth, and where's the opportunity to transform the problem into an opportunity? We don't take advantage of that.
All right. Yeah, we got.
And I do agree with what you're saying. Oh, I'm late. I do agree with what you're saying, that sometimes we get lost in the negative narrative, which can be very limiting. We have to be very careful when we are shaping our story and what we're saying, because words are power. Yeah. And so that wasn't going to be my original point, but I did want to follow up with you on that, that words are power, and it's very important that as we're speaking on ourselves, that we do it. If we don't want to tell a fable, we want to look at the realities of what is going on, but at the same time, we want to speak life and not death. But what I was going to say in regards to the question of competition, because that's exactly what it is. The church is going to suffer from the very same issues that our community as a whole suffers from. The church is not immune to that, because once again, it is an institution in the community. So it is going to suffer from competition, because it is in a society that is based on capitalism, and capitalism is an economic system. So we have to look at that when we're looking at our churches. And I think what you were saying, sometimes the spiritual aspect and the spiritual practice is drowned out. When I went to church, I remember being 12 years old, and I went to a small Baptist church in Alabama. That's where I'm from, Birmingham, small Baptist church. And where they didn't even like praise dancing. So it was very, very traditional. And I remember thinking, where do I fit in this? And I also remember thinking, when I leave the church house, what am I to do? I know you pray and you read the Bible, but I felt very disconnected from an actual spiritual practice that brought gains into my life. So, and that was important to me, and that's why I've turned to other ways of practice. I think this discussion is about the Black church, but Black people are more than just Christians. Black people are also Buddhists. Black people are also Muslim. Black people are also Jewish. So, and that, that's an umbrella. The spirituality is the umbrella. Sometimes I feel that we micro-focus on just the church. And we're marginalizing people when we do that. Because people feel like they can't jump into this discussion because I don't go to church. I wasn't at the church house. I wasn't a praise dancer. I cannot align with that experience. And we're doing ourselves a disservice when we're marginalizing people from a very important conversation. So when we talk about collaboration versus competition, we have to look at all of the spiritual institutions that exist in the city. And we have to stop marginalizing some of these institutions and start understanding that what we do in the church has to be beneficial to the community as a whole, not just that church body or not just that pastor. And I think that's sometimes why we do get lost in competition, because we're focusing on what's good for Ebenezer, what's good for Canaan, what's good for my church body, and our communities are looking like third world countries. So I think that's important.
And after Ricky Franklin, we're going to take some questions from the floor. So start preparing your questions.
Sure. Listen, one thing is for certain. This entire conversation is certainly too much to have in an hour and 45 minutes. And as you've probably already been able to pick up on, there is many facets, there's many divisions, there's many parts or components of the black church. And when you hear all of this, from a pastor's perspective, we can talk theology, but I also have to be able to talk business, and then we can talk theology. I can also talk business, but I'm going to have to also talk ministry. And when you have all these components mixed up in the pot, and there's somebody on the outside looking in, they really don't know what it takes to make all of this happen. You follow me? Theology, from theo, study of God. That's what we do. That's our primary concern. But then what good does it do me to tell you about the God that can feed you, and I can't help give you anything to eat? And do you suppose that the food or the substance that someone needs is going to come free? There's a cost. Then the next thing to consider is that you cannot put every church in the same category. You cannot put every pastor in the same category. There are some great churches, there are some great pastors, there are some pastors that will give you the very last out of their pockets. They will give you the clothes off of their backs. They will go to the jail to help get you out. They will go to the hospital to pray for you. They will show up at the gravesides. They will do your weddings. They will do all of this along with running the business of the church. It's really quite a shame, to be perfectly honest, that in the 21st century you can hardly get more than a handful of pastors together at a table to do something great. And everybody wants to, basically be their own little chief and run their own little business. And, but God is able to change some of that. And I think here's what's going to have to happen is that the people are going to have to hold their pastors, their clergymen, their churches accountable. And if they don't want to be accountable, then you really may need to consider finding you some other place to worship. When you talk about capital, when you talk about money, yes, there's a whole lot of money that's deposited in the banks on Sundays, dropped in boxes. It's a whole lot being dropped, and they're going in different directions, And sure, without a doubt, there's enough money that comes through the black church for the black church to have its own bank. I know that, but can you find 10 black churches that would pool their monies and put it in the same bank? Could you find them? Could you find one that's not worried about who would know how much they're depositing or what their business is? See? And so, it's really, really, really major. Somebody talked about economic development. That's too much for some churches or some pastors to even concede. But there are pastors in this city that's concerned about economic development, that are sitting down at the table discussing those issues and trying to bring about change. And so I'm saying that there's many, many areas when you think about the black church, and please don't think it's all that easy.
That's true.
It's quite difficult.
Thank you. We'll take some questions from the floor. Yes. Stand up and... We're gonna get you a microphone so we can. There we go. And tell us who you are, and then we'll get your question.
I was a part of the panel earlier. Minister Danny Martin, my spiritual uncle, knows me very well.
Thank you.
But it's a two-part question. The first part is real short. When did ministry become industry? That's the first part. When did ministry become industry? What I mean by that is I broke it down into 3 different types of ministry to industry topics. It's about money, sex, and materialism. All right, so when did ministry become industry? The second part is, when did the church, the black church, stop caring about the black community? Because, like the sister said, billion-dollar churches, and the community look like third-world slums. Like, it's
Okay.
terrible.
Well, let's see. We're gonna get one panelist to answer so that we can get another question before our time runs out. Who'd like to take on a brief answer for that?
I can tell you exactly when ministry went to industry. It went to industry when we stopped worrying about God and we started worrying about ourselves. For the Bible clearly says that for the love of money, see, your treasure is where your heart is. So therefore, when we started having all these extra anniversaries and these dues and these commitments, $40 here, $100 there, and we're going to raise such and such so we get a Cadillac for a man when you should serve no man and show no reverence to nothing but God, and you don't reverence no name according to the book of Psalms. So when you stop serving God, that's when you start serving man. And therefore, when you started putting pastors, that's when it went wrong.
All right, thank you. Next question. Yes, way in the back. Come on up. I don't think our cord will go that far. Okay, he's right.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name
Tell
is
us.
Breeden. I don't have a question.
Okay.
We as black people don't realize we have a visible church and an invisible church. It starts in the black home, and without that, if it's not coming from the home, how can a preacher tell you what to do? Let's just be the blind leading the blind. So that's just all I have to say.
Thank you. All right. I think we have a question back here. He was first, and then our young lady over here, and then we'll come to you. Okay.
I think in some respects, I think that we're somewhat hypocritical when it comes to our pastors. I think our pastors have to be savvy businessmen. You are running, electricity is not free. So you have, but yet we condemn, I think we condemn pastors and ministers whenever they step outside of the church and try to create some type of business and try to educate us on business and finances and things like that. We say, oh, the pastor's supposed to be talking about God. He's talking about we need to balance our checking accounts. So we hypocritical in the fact that we want our pastors to talk strictly about God, then ask a question and talking about why aren't churches building infrastructure and banks and all this good stuff. So we have to pick a side. Do you want your pastor to talk about God, or do you want him to? I think you have to serve a person in his whole entirety.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. And my lady in the back, my sister in the back, come on up. Thank you. Tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Deborah.
Thank you.
I want to ask a question. Okay, I firmly believe in dialogue. Okay, everything begins with dialogue. You were talking about the ministers, getting together. How come they cannot get together as a collective group, let the pride step down, and start to conversing with each other? How you can actually develop a community?
Good question. Who would like to take that into a brief answer? I think you kind of touched on that a little bit about collaboration.
It's certainly a difficult thing, but it does not mean that it's impossible, and it does not mean that it's not happening. And I'll give you a for instance right quick. MOED, the Ministers of Economic Development that was founded just last year. Many of you all have gotten little bitty bits and clips. Everybody want to know who is this group of pastors that have made a decision to come together for the benefit of the community and the city of Shreveport. It's happening right now. It's a very unusual dynamics because these pastors, they are from all walks. They aren't just Baptists. So they are Baptists, they are full gospel, they're AMEs, and that kind of things coming together. And it's solely because of what God is doing now. There are some who are seeing that when we come together, there is unity and strength, and we're not selfish. If I have a school at my church and you're a part of this group, we ain't doing the school. We're going to support your school.
Great.
And we're going to send our kids to your school. If you're building senior housing, we're not going to duplicate what you're doing. We're going to send our seniors that's looking for housing over to your housing complex. See, so it is happening. It's happening right now.
Thank you. And our last question right here, sir. And then go to Lee. Yes, sir. Come on up, Mr. Burke. My friend.
Okay, listen, this was a powerful.
Well, tell us all who you are now.
I'm sorry, Willie Bradford, Shreveport City Council.
Yes.
I was going to commend this group for their depth of their articulations here, because I could agree with every one of them. I really could, but because there's no one size fit all. I'm gonna reference the topic of the session in regards to the role of the church in 2016. And way before we heard the African proverb, at least I did, where it says it takes a village to raise a child. Our concept was it took a child going to church to become a better child. Because, you know, I mean, it was just the fact that, you know, I'm along with Reverend Kimball's age range, and it was an institution that was an outreach for a lot of kids. You know, we had different, you know, I mean, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, a lot of things was encompassed in the church. What I'm not hearing, and I'm gonna get to my question, what I'm not hearing is a consistent message from the church in regards to impacting the quality of life of the communities in which the churches are located or even represent. You know, we have some of the greatest flagship churches in impoverished communities, and they got big $1 million buildings, but around there, until you get to the building, you're looking at poverty and hopelessness and despair.
Right.
And we don't see a message that would impact that condition. Not even within our children. I said earlier, then I'm going to my question, that if a child comes to Sunday school, that child should at least should not have a problem with reading at school. Because if you're in Sunday school and your Sunday school teacher discovers that you're not a good reader, then they should be working with you to help you read. So when you get to school, you are a reader. And I'm not seeing the message of servanthood. Jesus said, if you want to be great, he didn't say nothing about all these other things. If you want to be great, be a servant. Let's serve our people, okay? And then the other thing is totally unrelated, is that there was a guy in Atlanta, Dewey Smith, who preached this articulate message when homosexuality became somewhat entrenched in the church, and he said you can't evangelize and antagonize at the same time. And I'm saying, how do we stop being so critical of each other and then expect that same element that we are seeking to reform and to evangelize and to save after we somehow criticize their actions?
Okay, we're going to have you represent for the panel.
Well, I don't want my opinion to represent for the panel,
Okay.
but you know, if I may respond to the second point, I agree that the criticism, because people feel that there's a misnomer that people are leaving the church. But to be honest, there was a study that showed that African Americans, above all other ethnicities or races, report a religious affiliation. So we're not wholesale leaving the church. But I do believe that, and I'll speak to my friend group that have chosen alternative ways of faith and spirituality, that people are tired of being criticized. If we go to the church to worship, we're not going to be called out about our personal lifestyle, whether that be homosexuality, whether that be the way we spend our money or the way that we dress. We come to reach a higher spiritual plane so that when we leave the church house, we can serve as a representative of the message that is being preached in the church, which takes me to your first question. With the church, the Black church specifically, being decentralized, it's not like the Catholic Church, where there's one big church that says, this is what the Pope feels, this is what we're all doing, this is what the Black church doesn't function that way. Maybe, fortunately, because there are some churches that are doing things that are disdainful, or maybe unfortunately, because we have to get together at some point and say, hey, look, I'm looking around me, I'm looking at 10 failing schools in my school system. That affects a whole bunch of children. That's a lot of sets of parents. Hey, there's people getting killed and gunned down in the streets. Hey, there's incest happening inside of our homes. There are more problems that I can discuss today. But where is the issue? And with $420 billion, is that what you said? Or million?
Billion.
$1 billion. Resources is not the issue.
Right.
It's how we're using these resources. When we're putting a pedestal, when we're taking one man, call him the pastor, and saying, we expect all of this from you, you better not step out of line. We're doing what we've done for generations and generations, which is expecting one person to save us all. But the church is composed of more than just the pastor. It consists of women that are ushers. It consists of deacons. It consists of the children who are going to the Sunday schools, who can then go out into the communities and change some things. So it is important that we have a strong message that we can all agree to, that public servants and politicians can also get jiggy with, that people that are teaching and administrators in our school system can also get jiggy with. It doesn't just need to be all churches agreeing. It has to be every sector and factor of human life that must agree to change, positive change, and this is how we get there.
All right, thank you. And I think that's our time. Lynn, can we get one, you the boss man. Can we get one more comment? Okay, got you covered. Dr. Franklin.
I certainly wanted to add this. I think that the generational divide and looking at the element of truth, we're not dedicated to truth. We get our knowledge from a variety of places. We listen to 10-second sound bites of people who are saying things we're comfortable with believing, so we're not dedicated to truth. And that on the generational divide, it's the element of choice. We're in a generation that believes in choice. When my grandmother came into my home, it wasn't, do you want to go to church? It was, why is she not going to church? And there better have been a good reason for me not going. So I was not told third hand what was going on at church. I was there to know. Now children have the option of whether or not they want to even go to Sunday school to get a lesson or foundation, or if they want to listen to, what is it, SpongeBob SquarePants. And so we're not equipped with making decisions based on truth, but rather based on knowledge that is known.
Okay, we got a question from the floor and then we'll wrap it up.
And I'll just make a comment before I ask my question. Drain down on Young Pros Entertainment, Beaches Bank. Coming from just being a young guy, young black man, and seeing a lot of people transition, you know, from youth services to big services, and you see the youth kind of like have this disconnect. And I think the reason is the Bible, as far as the teaching, and what I mean is only constricting only to our spirituality and not giving us life lessons that we can apply outside of the church walls. Why am I passing by a church and I'm seeing the same 1992 Honda Accord and the same broken down people walking to church, and you never see the congregation go to another level, and financial literacy is not being taught? You know, why is that? And you're coming out and you're running into the real life, and you got all this knowledge, right? We got all this knowledge, and we're throwing out these scriptures and everything, but it's not sticking because they still got to go pay their bills. They still got to go try to get somebody to keep their children. They're still dealing with welfare. So I guess I just say all that to kind of get us thinking, what can we do outside of just teaching just scripture and get outside of that? Of course, we got to have scripture. We have to. We have to be saved by the blood. But outside of that, when are we going to start teaching outside and bringing people in? I'll raise this quick question, and whoever can answer. And this is a totally different subject than the ones brought up. And we're speaking about the race. We know that the number one day that we're segregating in the United States is on Sunday. And we got black churches and we have white churches. And then we have the black men or the black family. I was raised Baptist black 13 years until I went into interracial church for a little while. Now I'm back at a black church. But I don't mind attending the interracial church. But when a black man decides to go to another church, or a black woman decides to go to another church, and it might be under white leadership, we bash them. And I understand the oppression. And I understand what my grandfather and his father went through. But we need to step up and say, we're going to allow people in other races, other ethnicities to come in and worship with us. So my question is, why? You know, why are we still bashing one another when we're trying to invite another race into the presence of God? We all serve the same God, right? So, just a little.
Let me ask that question.
I knew I was going to ruffle some feathers. That's why I really.
And Landon, if I can respond, just to your first point, the black community, we're the only community in the world that buy everything we want, beg for everything we need. Okay, so someone needs to talk about the elephant in the room. Sometimes it's about information, and to your point, Doctor, there's tons of information out there, but very little truth. We can find information everywhere. We're over-informed, but very little truth. And look, I'm not judge, not jury, where someone decides to go to worship. Okay, I do understand that, just as Pastor Kimball said, will that same pastor be at the jail to bond you out? Will that same pastor be there at the repast or the funeral? Oh, okay, or at your bedside? Will that same pastor come to your home when you've been infirmed for a while? So I just, the assessment, we need to make informed decisions, because again, with the youth today, you guys want a drive-through service. And that's what I hear. People talking about the black churches goes too long, you go 3, 4, 5 hours. And I'm not saying this for you personally, but I'm saying we've grown up, our youth has grown up where if we don't get the meal in 2.5 minutes, by the time we drive through the window, it's free. And faith and spirituality ain't like that.
But we'll spend a long time in Hazon, Texas. 5 hours. All right, shout out to Hazon, Texas.
Something in my spirit told me to let this young man go before me. And behold, the same question I was going to pose, but pose it differently, he said. So I'm glad he stood up. I moved back to Shreveport in 07. I feel like a strange man in a strange land. I could see a spirit of sheepishness among black people, to the sense that, so much such that black folk here seem to be ashamed to be black. And I'll always tell people, you go to work, they know you're black. if you in July, you go to the Essence Festival, you tell people you go to the Essence Festival, they know you're black. And so this is my question. You say, why do we, the issue about us interracial church services, that sort of thing, we ain't got no history. See, traditionally, when we came here in 1619 in Jamestown, that the religion was so, we came to the Americas with our own religion from the African continent. So the religion we got here. All right. So whatever way it's promulgated, whatever was changed up, that's what we got. But more in a modern context, I don't expect the Jews to let the Nazis educate their kids. I don't expect racist people in Alabama to let the Black Panthers educate their kids. So I don't suggest that a foreign entity should come in and do for us what we should do for ourselves. Secondly, I have this conversation with people who happen to be white all the time. And they say, man, it's a great thing, I want to invite you to my church. We've got an interracial congregation, and our pastor's a white guy. And he's got several black people in the congregation. You know what I asked him? Would you be racially mixed if that same guy was black? And I tell you, when you start showing me a racially mixed congregation where the pastor is black, then I'm good with that. I'm good with that. And I said I would say this, that I do what I do because I'm not ashamed to be black.
All right.
I've been born black, my daddy was black, my mom was black, and all my brothers and sisters are black. And until we understand to first love yourself, you can't expect people that don't look like you to love you. You can't expect those people to respect you. Once you learn to respect yourself, other people will respect you. So if you want to go to an interracial, that's totally up to you. But I just think in this modern context, we need to begin to love ourselves and be comfortable with the fact that you're black. Every person that interviewed me this week, I told them the same thing. I said, when you make Shreveport, black Shreveport better, you make all of Shreveport better. Because last year we got all of these hits on YouTube and Facebook. Oh, if this was white people talking about buying white-owned businesses, oh, it'll be the second coming of Jesus. Well, y'all already done that. That's already been done in America. What are you talking about? So when people come to the conclusion they need to do for themselves, then it becomes an issue. But I think that we can work harmoniously with other brothers and sisters, but we first got to begin to respect ourselves and love ourselves. If not, these chronic issues that we got will continue to promenade in Shreveport, Louisiana, in the state of Louisiana, and in the U.S.
Let's thank Lynn Cawthorn for our final words. Thank you. That wraps up our session 3. Let me see. Next, we have the vendors fair that is still going on. Yes, please support these vendors. They are here supporting you and us and what we're doing. And we want to thank this initiative. I want to personally thank all those, the committee members for putting all of this together. This takes a lot of work. Let's give them a round of applause. Lynn Cawthorn, Sylvester Marshall, Ryan Williams, Fred Davis, Kevin Hoover. I'm reading their names because, you know, you got to give people flowers while they're living. Kamisha West, Christian Reed, Belina Cawthorn Turner, Linda Sargent, Shayna McIntosh, and Miriam Harley. We thank you. We thank the sponsors for their support and their belief in what we are doing. So thank you. All right. Oh, I want to thank Southern University Shreveport. Let's give them a round of applause. Shreveport's Community College. I know y'all like to send folk over to Bibsy. Y'all think the ice is colder and the air colder and all that good stuff. But I promise you, if you send them to Southern University of Shreveport, we'll take care of them. So thank you so much.
Hey, one last thing before we break up, we want to end with a brief word of prayer. Every time I see my good pastor friends, I'm almost inspired to take on my calling. And when I do start preaching, I got a sermon. It's entitled, "They Left Me for Dead." And my text will be the story of the Good Samaritan. And at the end of my exhortation, I will let you know I got up. So I want to let Pastor Kimball just come say a brief word of prayer to dismiss us. And one more last announcement. Thank my co-chairperson of Sylvester Marsh. She wants me once again to mention next Friday, the Youth Empowerment Rally at Galilee Baptist Church, 1500 here, honoring Pastor Edward Jones, our guest speaker, Jamar Harrison Bryant of Baltimore, Maryland, Empowerment Temple.
What time?
7 p.m. 7 p.m.
All right, we're ready for prayer. Amen. I'm a Baptist preacher. I'm going to try to do what I was asked to do, but I must do this. Encourage you to go to church tomorrow somewhere. And remember that every church and every pastor, they are not just alike. Know your church, know your pastor. You'll be fine, but get to know them. Amen. God bless you. Father, how we praise you, how we bless your name, how we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity. And Lord, while we clearly recognize and understand that the problems of the black church are many, we know that you're God. And we ultimately know that everything is in your hands. So we ask, oh God, as we prepare to go from this place, that you'll go with us all, give us traveling grace, bless us as we stop by the vendors and do the other things as we're leaving this place. But most of all, oh God, give us a mind that stayed on you. God, we love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, praise up.
Start the streaming too.